If you want to see my engine in action, you have to watch this video. Because currently everything is broken. And it kind of reminds me how difficult it is to work with Gen 2. Hmm. I think I found the most important piece of Generation 3 rendering. A piece that I have been neglecting this whole time. But you cannot actually jump from Gen 1 to Gen 3. Because technically if you're using like voxels, most of your rays have equal distribution of work. Even if they hit an object early, it's not really a hard working array anyways. Because it's just one ray traveling through space. Like, it's not a big deal. With polygon rendering, you're just sending polygons on top of each other. Or behind each other. That one is a stinker. Alright? That one is just stuff you're using right now. But it can use this like Gen 3 feature. It can inject itself and all of a sudden is the ultimate optimizer, ultimate multiplier. Just like how AI is suggesting. It's literally the most essential feature that I never implemented, meaning that it's so essential, it changes the game entirely, right? With Gen 2, alright, I was able to reach 30 FPS, which is good enough. Mean that I can have some objects on the screen. You know, let's say 10,000 like simple objects, not like complicated meshes on the screen. Then I get 60 FPS. If I try to do something more complicated, then it goes down to 30. If I do something really complicated, it's 20. Right? We're probably not going to go below that. But this is the kind of distribution. And I'm kind of like, this territory. I don't have to do anything too complicated. And I have a generally good range of frames. It seems to be working just fine. There's one in between. We're trying to do relatively a lot. But yeah. If I contain 60 FPS, that means I can do like some basic things with my rendering engine. But everyone can do that. Everyone could just splash some particles on the screen. And even though I organize my objects nicely and I have this like massive grid on the screen to put objects into these boxes, that was just stupid. Grids are just generally stupid, unfortunately. I can have vertical stripes, but I cannot have grids at all. No 3D grids, no 2D grids. These are exponentially like cumbersome things to work with. I'm only allowed to work with pixels, and unfortunately that's not a grid. Alright, that's such a fine grid that it doesn't actually work as a 2D grid. Alright? Because you don't split it into pieces, right? You just let it work itself out. So instead of doing 2D, 3D, one-dimensional, alright, I'll just take one line and prepare workers in this one line and send the workers down to do their thing. The missing piece that I did not explain, that AI is yapping about and saying that it's a multiplier, it's also saying that we waste 70 to 90% of threads, meaning that the multipliers between 3x and 10x. So generation 1 is when you get introduced into like this baby version of rendering. Because all you do is just sending rays across the grid. Again, the problem with grid is like, what do you do with objects? How do you split objects? Because it gets really complicated really fast. And even though this works flawlessly and it's easy to master, that one problem and like how you're gonna solve that problem actually probably gonna just tank your performance anyways, right? Your 3D objects that actually supposed to be off-grid have to do something special. And it's just like very uncomfortable sort of like question mark, right? How do you solve that? There is no solution. You are bound to a grid. You have to obey the grid, and that's the thing you have to constantly escape. The goddamn grid. This is camera, by the way, inside a 3D grid of pixels, or voxels, basically. And so far, voxel is still just the only example I have. Maybe lay of land actually also counts, but I never truly double-checked how it works. It looks like it's just voxels, you know? But voxels can also be not ray traced. That's another thing about voxels. They don't have to be ray traced. So I don't know what engine is being used. With voxel, everything is very obvious. All right. If the guy said ray tracing, that's what it means. You go through a grid. You can even have mirrors. I don't know why the guy couldn't fucking do mirrors, because that's a cool thing. You can do reflections like that, right? And technically, it's well made, right? The ray bounces off the water, so you get a few toy things to play with, like ray bounces and easy way to cast shadows, I believe, because you bounce the ray towards the light source, which is the sun, right? So you got all these like cool little benefits to hang on to. When you pick Generation 1, you really treat it like a fucking baby. You know, you got all the cool things. With Generation 2, I was treated as a fucking ignorant buffoon. Alright? Not like a baby, but like, you can ignore this issue right there. You can ignore it. You'll be fine. Alright? I've reached these things. I can, like, impress zero amount of people, apparently, because nobody cares about anything. But it's still impressive to me every single time that I fucking do anything, including baking out a car. Like, that's the most impressive thing, and obviously, no one clicks. Right? Okay. No one wants to understand this anymore. They want the final result. They click on anything that says hightail, though. Because skibbity. Skibbity riz, guys. That's all that matters in this life. Even Unreal Engine does not have skibbity riz, unfortunately. I have to tell you bad news about it. But okay, it doesn't matter. The results matter more. I have tested how Gen 1 works. I have tested how Gen 2 works. And I was just like an ignorant buffoon. The ignorance is that you can keep going. You know, that's the ignorance. That something is missing. One big chunk of how you do things is completely missing, basically. Someone chomped it. The rest is fucking amazing. You have liberated all your blocks to just float around freely in space. You're discovering different meshes. The possibilities are endless. With the caveat that it's a little bit complicated. Eventually, you're still pushing rocks forward, like you're still having a hard time because that one thing is missing. That one thing like drags you like gravity because you haven't fucking figured it out. And there's another like barrier of Gen 2. You have to learn how to use lists. You're not provided list in HLSL, so you have to make your own version of lists. This is not tied to rendering, by the way. This is tied to object spawning and storage. You spawn objects and you store somewhere, but they all have to be connected. Maybe not necessary, but I found it very necessary. But it's not necessary for rendering said objects. So apparently now there's a split of how you handle objects and how you handle rendering. Just a little bit of a split. I say this is kind of a nice little bonus to have if you're handling lists properly, right? So that's that. Now we're in the like heavy part. I've obviously put myself in a tough situation now that I have like explored most of the easy stuff, but because something is missing, it's always gonna fucking bother me that I don't have it, right? And the moment I wanted to do a distribution system, so let's say I have this block, right? And I have to distribute it across way too many screen points. Normally a block is this size or that size, fits into 1 or 4 places, but this one takes extra amount of work and like exponentially more than the other blocks. So my threads start crying of like, why do you give me so much work? When others can just chill and they have done their job after 1 hour, I have to spend 8 hours doing my job, set my threads. All right, GPU is all about the threads. All right, all about lots and lots of workers, basically. And if you overheat a few of them, the whole system collapses. You're not allowed to do that. That one rule you have to follow, and again, it's very easy to do that in Gen 1. It's a little bit more difficult to do it in Gen 2. Now you have to juggle in a lot of variables, basically. And this is one of them. So I distribute this block, but it's like, well, that's still hard. Like, you have to write into every single one of these. And so one thread gets abused and tanks my performance really badly. The funny thing is, you can't see it. You get up close to the block, you can't see it for most part until you get really close to the block, when it takes the entire screen up. So technically the thread is actually able to handle quite a lot until it tags the performance. But the suspicion that the performance is being tagged in so many more ways than this one remains, right? In other words, I will have to work on equal distribution. I call it work map. Alright? Just work map. Workers must be healthy. Yeah, work map distributes the work equally. So everyone's green-lit. No one has to do extra fucking lifting. And unfortunately, I don't have diagnostics to tell when the threads have a hard time and they fucking lag behind. I also don't have a way of like crushing terrible workers, just like tossing them aside. Maybe there is a way. Maybe there is like a forced stop. Kill threads. You cannot terminate. Oh my god. Yep. That's what it is. Diagnostic counter is very important. Alright. Not measure lag, but not stop it. I can still, like, return it, though. Measure lag, but not stop it? What do you mean? Because happens inside the thing you're trying to early out of. So I can. No? Yes? There might be more stuff, okay? There might still be like you're falling behind, loser, and we kick you out. We force stop your progress basically in whatever you're doing. But that's even another layer on top of the work map. This is so essential that again, it's like why didn't you do that? Yes, you just jumped into like generation 2. You know how to dispatch tons and tons of threads, and you're doing tons of cool things basically. Now, I'm not exactly sure, by the way. Okay, I'm probably sure. Am I sure? Like, I'm doing ray tracing, and obviously I'm a fucking dummy, right? On my own terms, I can't just rule the universe. I cannot figure out the secrets of the universe on my own terms. But no one's working on this in particular, right? Like, we have nanite, and this is as close as we are getting right now. And unfortunately for nanite, Euclidean just happened to be ahead of its time, way ahead. Way went in a different direction into like a highway system, basically, and just zoomed past nanite. Nanite is still trying to catch up like a fucking old man, basically, on top of, attached to Unreal Engine, something that I actually don't want to have on my PC, personally, because I had it and it fucking lagite. It had a little bit of lagite in there as well, not just nanite. And potentially just very difficult to use when, in turn, I can just invent my own system, right? To try and, like, rival Euclidean. I probably, with Generation 3, I still can't beat Euclidean, guys. I swear to God, that shit is insane. That shit that came out in 2012, that shit is insane to me. Like, what the fricky dicky? I know it's possible, but you have to really wrap your head around all this multi-threading shit to incredible extent. You have to be a genius, and you have to be dedicated genius. It's also called Australian. You basically have to be a crazy Australian guy. It's fine. You cannot do it in Africa, you cannot do it in Brazil, but if you're a crazy Australian guy who loves eating snakes maybe for breakfast and likes giant spiders crawling in their house, yeah, you can figure out something better than nanites that we currently have. Just straight up. Because again, if Unreal Engine was laggy with Oblivion Remastered, I have one comment and one comment alone. You're doing it wrong. You just don't know how to render things whatsoever. Alright? At this point, potentially it's the polygon problem, because everyone has polygon problems. I see it fucking all over TikTok. And I drop these, like, smirk comments of, like, I don't have the problems you're having, LOL. I don't know why people are not more interested in my work, since they are fucking struggling right now. Every single person gets sucked into, like, trying to performance boost their games. Like, it's absolute dog shit that they have to deal with. And apparently Unreal Engine is not a go-to direction for them to liberate themselves either. Nothing is, like, convenient enough. And I'm so sad for them, because I have something so valuable and they don't even see it. No one sees it. You watch this video? How did that happen? Who put a gun onto your fucking head? You know? Are you kidding me? So yeah, it's a multiplier, and we're gonna get 60 FPS, and Generation 3 might just be enough for all my needs, basically. That's what I'm saying. Alright, I need to jump generations to finally be comfy in my seat. Another announcement. What you see here. Probably I keep the images, though. I keep images. I don't need to render them myself. But these buttons, I think Spawned Engine, which is the name of the engine, they will now handle buttons very soon. All this 2D shit. Why? I'll tell you why. This actually tanks my performance. This can even crash my PC if I summon too many of them. Right? I can probably summon like 60 of them. And they have tiles. They have a lot of tiles. But the funny thing is, not only I don't get the FPS, like my FPS tanks, right, because of this bullshit. Just because there's a lot of tiles on the screen. In a Spawned Engine, this would be a fucking joke. But not only this would be a joke, ray tracing is the master of shaders. There's nothing better. But at the same time, it's also, like, I mean, technically you can shade whenever you feel like it. If you're good enough at shading, you can do it. But I'm not good enough at shading, because I don't know how it works, even. You know? I'm not very good at learning from just, like, the books. And following instructions. What I'm good at is, understanding of, like, well, Unity does not actually provide tools for you to shade any of these sprites. Even just sprite shading hard, you know? And that's all I need to do, just like escape sprite shading. It's not really ray tracing oriented, but it's rendering oriented, right? And I can like highlight things properly. Unity provides you with shitty highlighting features. Oh, oops, right? Unity did not provide me with like remove background feature as well. I had to find it. Dig the internet for it. And I can't just keep on digging for assets over and over again and for tutorials over and over again when I know that I can actually do it myself. So, if I can shade little tiles easier and I can boost performance, there's actually no reason not to just plug these things into the Spawned engine and have it there. You know, at the same time, it's gonna boost the power of Spawned engine. It will like show to people truly how it works, and most importantly, when it handles anything at all, it increases experience, right? So if I inject all these like 2D problems to handle, then I have more experience handling rendering than if I just gave up and searched for things. Like, it's pretty obvious, right? And it could like boost a little bit of a 3D rendering too, or turn a lot of things into 3D, and just like allow me to faster make games, because everything happens in Spawned engine instead of like, I don't have to flirt with Unity to have a 2D game anymore. You know, so I'll probably just give up on Unity entirely, migrate towards compute shaders. And compute shaders, well, anyone else can handle compute shaders just as well as Unity can. Technically, Unity might be just left behind. Who knows? Alright? But I personally cannot do that. I cannot make that transition away from Unity. We don't have to talk about it. So yeah, on top of work distribution, the work map basically, I'll just eventually add 2D stuff. But this is a 2026 project to transition all the 2D things, basically recreate them in the engine. Well, the work map is literally the first thing I have to do, and I'll show you guys maybe after a week, maybe after a month, how crazy it is to enter Generation 3 rendering. I'm telling you, maybe it's more crazy than I can imagine because, again, it's a multiplier, and I've already went this far without it, you know? And again, the further you go, the harder it is to actually optimize things, to write code. It slows me down to the point where, like, there's no reason to not abandon Generation 2 and just implement the missing piece and restart again. It feels like a roguelike experience now. Well, we'll see what happens. See you guys next time.